I am just hoping that everyone comes on time.
Right.
Indian
And
standard.
one more thing, Sunanda, I'll just make it clear. I'm down with throat infection.
Right,
So
right.
I might have to take pauses to drink some hot water in the middle. So
Please feel free. This is very informal, and I think formalism is a thing of the past now.
yes,
Indonesia, do
I
you
think
think?
so.
I think.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll just take 5 minutes and I'll be here.
Sure. 100%. So
So you can hear me. There is no issue with the voice.
nope. It's absolutely perfectly audible.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I will not be expecting any lag from your end, at least. You're staying
No,
in.
I'm not from lag, but maybe the voice can be kind of not a lagging. I'm talking about a quality of voice. That's
Yeah,
all.
but you are staying in a data-rich part of the world.
Yeah. That's a kind of.
7:21. So I'm hoping that by 7:25, at least people should log in.
Yeah.
I have been telling my students to log in, so I know eventually they will log in at 7:35 or 7:40. I don't know. I mean, I do not know whether you face the same issue there in part of the world as well. I don't know.
No way. Like, except in some cases where there are real emergency. Otherwise, people are here on time. Most of them, 95%.
Right.
95% are like they will come a little early rather than
Right, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. That's the advantage that you have. That part of the world. Yeah. So Sanjay, Mr. Roy is already here, it seems. Yes. I cannot see Mr. Roy just yet. Yeah, he's there. Is he?
Yeah, he's there.
Yeah, but then why is he an attendee? He should be a panelist.
Yeah, you can send a.
Can you please check? I think. Yeah. Yeah, I think he's there.
Hi, Suryan.
Hi, sir. Am I audible and visible to you?
You are. Can you hear me? And can you see me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Sorry, sir, that was some sort of a technical snag at the end.
No problem. So tell me the format. What's the plan?
Sir, so initially I'll just introduce the session and I'll hand it over to the session chair. The session chair will probably speak for around 4 or 5 minutes, and then you come in. So
And is it a question and answer, or you want us to do bhashan?
So bhashan followed by question answer. That's something that you would like to believe.
Question and answer is so much more better than
I know. Sir, I'm agree.
And the issue you want us to talk about is the alternative paradigm, is it?
Yeah, I mean that is something that I have decided, but then you are free to talk about the issues that you think are important. I would not like to constrain what you want to say, and that's absolutely up to you.
And the audience is primarily the students and
students, mostly students and academics members of the academic community, should I say?
Okay. And you can see me, right? Because I'm not popping up on your screen.
No. You're absolutely perfectly audible, perfectly visible. Sir.
How do you do, Indranil? Hi, Anurag.
Hello, Sanjay, Mr. Roy.
And Sanjay.
Yeah, hello. It's morning.
Hello, Mr. Roy.
What is the situation there? Good, bad, ugly? Are you going to go into lockdown? No COVID?
No, it's a partial lockdown. Things are not good, but I think that the state is overreacting. Because the last time what happened, Mr. Roy, so there was a really emergency situation in hospitals, and now in Canadian government, since Canada they don't have any private practice on the government.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening. And for some people from abroad, there is my friend Indranil there. I can see him from Canada. I should perhaps say good morning, I suppose.
Yes,
If I'm not.
yes.
Good morning.
It's 9 o'clock in
And
the morning.
yes. And Dr. Roy is also there with his nice flowing white hair. I'm gray hair, lovely. Nice to see you. So today we are in the 30th evening out of 75. Yes, Professor Dr. Pradeep Malik. Guruji, namaste. So nice to see in the 30th evening out of 75 evenings of Global Communication Education Conclave that started on 21st of October 2021. The first day led by someone from the University of Dr. Pradeep Malik, and she was Dr. Amrita Chakravarti, who was the leader of the first day. Today we come to the 30th day, the last day of 2021 for this program, which will again resume from 2nd or 3rd of January, 2nd of January ahead. So very nice to first welcome Dr. Sunayan Bhattacharya, who is the leader of today. Dr. Sunayan Bhattacharya is an associate professor of Adamas University and the head of the Department of Journalism and Communication Management. He has been recently awarded for his excellence in research by the university this year after excellence in teaching last year. And he has a checkered career, having worked with the Gandhinagar-based PDPU University, having worked with Ramoji Kriyan Universe, RKU, having worked with the Central University of Agartala, Tripura, and having done his PhD from PDPU. Apart from, that's very interesting, having worked for several years with Times of India and Reuters after his post-graduation from Symbiosis Institute of Media and Communication, Pune. So today, Dr. Sunayan Bhattacharya will steer us in this program, and he will take us through the entire program. He has brought in a bevy of experts and we are from multiple cities of the country and at least a couple of us from abroad as well. So we shall be having a great time, I suppose. Without taking more time, I'd like to just mention that each of these evening, which may spill over 200 minutes, will be finally edited for a 1-hour show. And this is being done by MSTV, a part of Aft University led by Sandeep Marwa. They are editing it for 1 hour and they are showing it on MSTV and they are also putting it up on YouTube. This particular program just now is live on YouTube. It will be there, the full program, and then the edited program later on. We shall be awarding a stalwart today, and you will get to know it in time. Stalwart for his contribution to media education and media arts. And each of our talks will go separately on YouTube as well, further edited. Apart from that, I request all the speakers to submit short 1,000-word summary of what they speak today with additional points, whatever, later on to Dr. Sunayan, who is leading the show today, because all these talks of the 75 evenings would get into 1 or 2 volumes of books, depending on the content. That's another goal. This is in memory of. So we end the 75th year on 15th August 2022. And before that, these books will be published. We'll have a proper occasion for that. We'll invite all the contributors that time as well. This much from me, and that's all. We will have the speakers and a book released. Over to you, Dr. Sunayan Bhattacharya, the leader, the working committee member of Global Media Education Council, and the leader for today's evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Am I perfectly audible and visible?
Yes, very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, sir, for your kind introduction. It's always a surreal experience listening to your own profile, and that too from Professor Jyotika Chaudhary, one of the undoubted behemoths of media education. Without wasting any more time, let me get on with the show. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Sunayan Bhattacharya, as Professor Chaudhary has already mentioned. Well, the world is going through a very tough time. The pandemic, as we all know, has destabilized humanity. Normal life has taken a beating. We are still grappling with a lifestyle that didn't come naturally to us. However, there's a graver danger lurking in the shadows. Like the dark monster, it is sizing up humanity before it begins its assault. I'm sure some of you have already figured out as to what I mean. There are no prizes for guessing. I'm indeed talking about the global attack on free speech and individual liberty. In a conditioned and make-believe world, we are constantly being fed an erroneous narrative that benefits a select few at the expense of the larger mass. Most of us are succumbing, surrendering, and obliquely accepting a worldview where oppressors are being constantly projected as benefactors. The worst part of the story is that most of us are actually aware of this lethal abomination. However, as Pink Floyd rightly sang 4 decades back, we are comfortably numb. We don't have to be rocket scientists to understand that the root cause of this problem is the mainstream media and its subtle and not so subtle agenda, dominated by people from the privileged ruling class and driven by commercial interests. The corporate controlled mainstream media, also known as MSM. Can everyone please mute themselves?
Bhattacharya Unions of the coordinator of the session.
Can everyone please mute themselves? Thank you. So dominated by people from the privileged ruling class and driven by commercial interests, the corporate-controlled mainstream media, also known as MSM in some quarters, is no longer a part of the solution. Whether we talk about the undercoverage of certain global regions or we talk about information trivialization, the MSM is doing its bit to strengthen the dreaded social and economic disparities among different sections of the society. In fact, a close look at MSM, and it is very apparent that even cultural imperialism and supremacism stem from the creation of a dominant narrative that is heavily tilted in favor of the governing class. Today's session is a humble effort to create an alternative narrative that aims to create a just and fair world, a world where political, economic, social, cultural, and racial discriminations are frowned upon and opposed and not celebrated, a world where a select few don't rule the majority, and where freedom and liberty are the key social constructs. Lofty ideals indeed. However, we have to believe that it is possible. All the panelists for today believe in this dream, and hence they have decided to address this session and enlighten us with their ideas about the creation of an alternative media ecosystem that believes in egalitarianism and banks on the power of the people. Therefore, the theme for this session rightfully is creating an alternative paradigm in media praxis. On this note, it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Dr. Pradeep Malik, the session chair for the day. One of the doyens of Indian media education, Professor Malik is currently the head of the Department of Languages, Literature and Aesthetics under the School of Liberal Studies at Pandit Deendayal Petroleum University, Energy University in Gandhinagar. Someone who truly believes in the amalgamation of industry and academics, Professor Malik has the distinction of having a career that spans more than 3 decades, with stints both in industry and academics. Professor Malik is a name to reckon with in the twin fields of development communication and journalistic practices. Professor Malik was awarded the Hiramani Gold Medal for his PhD work. An accomplished author, Professor Malik has written 3 acclaimed books. Sir, please grace the session with your opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sunen Bhattacharya. I see lots of familiar faces here. Thank you, Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary, for inviting me to this session. And I'm indeed intrigued. I'm not at all, I'm really intrigued how come I am the session chair, but then I am designated as session chair by Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary and Dr. Sunen Bhattacharya. Thank you very much. We have very eminent panelists.
Your video is not very clear.
I do understand. I do understand there is some light issue.
Okay.
Not enough light on my face, but in due course it will become. proper.
Okay, over
That
to
has
you.
been my experience. That has been my experience. In the morning also, I think it is a little better now. In due course, it will become better. Yeah, there's some issue with my laptop camera.
No, it's like old wine. It gets better with every year.
It is settling. Yeah, it is settling. So thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this. We are more eager to listen to the stalwarts, Mr. Roy, Dr. Chakraborty, and Mr. Rudra, Anurag Rudra. Since I have to make the opening remark, and as Sunen said in the beginning, I was part of the mainstream media until a few years ago, an active part. I continue to be a part of active media, but not so actively. Now people invite me for debates and discussions, so I'm on television, trying to pacify the party on my left and the party on my right. That has been my engagement with media these days. But I'm more into teaching now, in fact, full-time into teaching. But going by what I have done for these 30 years in the industry, I was with the mainstream media, and in the mainstream media, I was with the most, if I can use the word, some of you may counter me, most capitalist of the capitalist media. No prizes for guessing which organization I'm referring to. I worked for them for close to 2 decades. So seeing it from from inside, in fact, I was part of it, so I can't disown my own contribution to whatever that organization is, good or bad or whatever it is. But coming to, because we have been trying to bring academics and action, praxis, that is what praxis is, together. So I guess off late, this praxis, media praxis, is not a new term. We have all heard of FOGO process many years ago, decades ago, how some people who were supposed to be displaced from a certain island in Newfoundland, in Canada, how they were empowered with cameras, and they found a place for themselves. They found they won back their son. Then in India also, we have, if you remember, Seva Video, that self-employed women's association video, how they used media to fight for the rights of the most underprivileged workers who belong to and continue to belong to unorganized sector. So praxis is nothing, and they were all successful. The Seva Video is a massive success and a wonderful model of media praxis, as was FOGO process many decades ago. But off late, as Sunen in his opening remark was saying, what concerns us really is the brutal market force that is dominating media. Let me again give a disclaimer. I have been part of that market force, and I'm a beneficiary of that market force in the form of the good salary and the high salary that I was getting, much more than many of my counterparts in the industry. So I'm part of it. So there is a disclaimer here. But coming back to what we really feel and what we can do is how to do something while being in the mainstream media. Some other day, I'll have the occasion to share, maybe when I, as Professor Chaudhary said, when you write your paper, do write all these, add all these points, and I'll love to add these points to that paper. How while being in the mainstream media, the most capitalist of the capitalist media, how I could push my agenda, if I can use that term. And I'm not the only person. There are many like me. That is the silver lining in the cloud, that there are many like me who do this. Now, what all we can do as academic and media practitioner, maybe we continue to do lots of research, take that research to the field. Again, we have lots of such examples, how media people have researched and then they implemented those things. We can do some capacity building for people whose voices need to be heard. Seva example. Professor Chaudhary, I was told sometime back, Professor Chaudhary, if you allow me to share this, I would love to share how you shelled out money from your own pocket to buy some audio video equipment cameras for some people, and they use that to tell their stories. I hope, Professor Chaudhary, you're okay with my sharing this.
This is,
People know the
yeah,
story, so people know the story.
No, I haven't been telling much. This is in South 24 Parganas.
Yes.
South 24 Parganas in the Sundarban area, among youth who are educated but without resources. I've also adopted a school there.
So, being modest, you have not been telling, but people have been talking about it, Professor Chaudhary. So, I thought I'll share this. And then a little bit of advocacy. Advocacy with the lawmakers, with the media people themselves. You know, lots of we media academics now are also into consultancy. You know, so we do consultancy, and many a time as part of our consultancy, we have to do, let us say, some developmental work and then document it. And then what happens after documentation? It has to go to the masses. And who takes the call to print it finally? Or who takes the call to make a show out of it finally? I mean, we often approach the local reporter who tries his or her best, but ultimately it is the editor who takes the call, you know, who calls the shot and who takes the call, whether it is going to be broadcast or printed or not. So we need to do a little bit of media advocacy with those who take that call. That is what I want to bring, to attention to the August gathering here. That it's not that everything is so gloomy. Yes, things are really, really gloomy. In response to those things, in response to those market forces, there is media activism within. In response to certain people's agenda to push their rightist or leftist or centrist or right or wrong agenda, there is a response to media activism to that also. Fake news, deliberately, most of the time, and sometimes, inadvertently also pushed, as an agenda. Media activism is a response to that also. So I am sure the August gathering here will be very eager to listen to all the panelists, Mr. Sujoy Roy, Dr. Chakrabarti, and Mr. Anurag Rudra, their views on all this, and we'll wait for that. We are eager to listen to you all, panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now that you have beautifully narrated the objective of today's session, it will be my sheer privilege to introduce our chief guest, Mr. Sanjay Roy. It is indeed an uphill task to introduce Mr. Roy and his huge array of works. However, as it is, the responsibility is on me, and I shall try and do it to the best of my abilities. Sanjay K. Roy, an entrepreneur of the arts. Please mark those words. It's a very interesting word, entrepreneur of the arts. Is the managing director of Teamwork Arts, which produces over 33 highly acclaimed performing arts, visual arts, and literary festivals across 40 cities in countries such as Australia, Canada, Egypt, France, Germany, Hong Kong, Italy, Singapore, South Africa, Spain, United Kingdom, United States of America, including the world's largest free literary gathering, the annual Jaipur Literature Festival. And I'm pretty sure everyone here would know that. Roy has received the National Award for Excellence and Best Director for the film Shahjahanabad, The Twilight Years. He's a founder trustee of Salam Balak Trust, SBT, also known as SBT, which is working to provide support services for street and walking children in the inner city of Delhi, where over 55,000 children have benefited from education, training, and residential services. In 2011, the White House presented SBT the US President's Committee of Arts and Humanities Award for an international organization. Roy works closely with various industry bodies and government on policy issues within the creative industries and cultural sector in India, and is a senior office bearer on several committees working on policy infrastructure for the creative industries. He is the co-chair of the Art and the Culture Committee of the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, FICCI, and former president of the Event and Entertainment Management Association, EMA, which is the most important organization in the event sector, and an advisor to the Arts Council of England Diversity Board for Theatre. He is on the advisory council of various international agencies, federations, and universities. Roy has also been an academic in a way. Roy has lectured and worked in collaboration with universities, including those of Western Australia, DUT, Brisbane, Monash, University of Chicago, Harvard, MIT Media Lab, Adamus, Symbiosis, University of Houston, Columbia College, London School of Economics, University of York, Swansea, etc. But before I call him to present his lecture for the day, the Global Media Education Council, GMEC, is proud to announce that Mr. Roy is being conferred with an award for stellar contribution to media arts and learning. I would invite Professor Ujjwal K. Chaudhary to come and take it forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me first note Dr. Sanjay Roy, who is a stalwart, as very ably introduced by Dr. Sunayan Bhattacharya, the entire background. Obviously, it's not easy to have a lifetime of background of such work in few words, few minutes. My first introduction to Dr. Roy was when I was the Dean of Symbiosis. And several of our students were trained, interned, and some of them even employed by Dr. Roy. That time, I think it was called Teamwork Films, if I'm not wrong. Teamwork Arts is a new name. Now, after that, in several JLF sessions, some of my past students, whether of Symbiosis or of Whistling Woods, and as recently as 2019 from Adamus University, where I was the Pro-Vice Chancellor till last July, he has been training, his team has been training our past students. I must note this because for me, the greatest satisfaction is to see a young talent being nurtured by the masters in the industry. And that has been the case. As far as Dr. Roy's personal background, professional background, everything has been told. I don't want to get into that. Professional background in particular. But what my personal happiness is that I know him, have got him as a board of studies member at times, advisory board member, from Symbiosis to Pearl Academy to Adamus, visiting these campuses, addressing the students. That has been my bigger satisfaction, I must tell that. I must tell that he's a part of also a media group in which, and he contributes with a lot of ideas at times, opinions, some links which are very important to know. And significantly, when the Jaipur Literature Festival concept went in the last 20 months, went online, and a series of literature meets were done online, fabulous programs, they were all shared. And I really thank Dr. Roy that he could bring, even in the very depressing times of pandemic, he could bring the best of literateurs and artists to us through the digital medium. That also has been a great contribution. Today, few days away from the next JLF, which is hybrid mode, physical and digital, which is coming in Jaipur. This is another experiment that he is doing. I hope you can continue doing such lovely path-breaking experiments and initiatives till the last day of your life. We feel proud and honored as the Secretary of Global Media Education Council, on behalf of my President, Dr. Professor K.G. Suresh, the Vice Chancellor of Makanlal University, on behalf of the 9 Vice Presidents from 9 different nations of the world, it is my honor to confer the award for stellar contribution to media learning and media arts to Dr. Sanjay Roy. He is indeed, in a sense, professing what he has practiced in real life. Can we have the video, please, before he speaks out? the hard copy of this certificate signed by all the vice presidents from all over the country, all over the world of GMAC and president and secretary shall be couriered to you in some time. And we'd expect a summary of what you speak today for the book that we will release on 15th August 2022. Over to you, Dr. Roy, for your acceptance talk.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Chaudhary, and all of the vice presidents and the presidents of GMEC. I'm not sure why I'm being conferred this honor, but it is a humbling occasion. Many times I keep saying the minute you get a lifetime achievement, which means you need to retire, you've been there, done that. But I promise you, I'm not going to go quietly into the night. I am going to stand and fight.
Now, we debated on this and changed the word lifetime to stellar contribution so that we can get back to you 3 years later or 4 years or 5 years later with a lifetime as well.
Thank you so much. As Dr. Bhattacharya said, there's much to fight for. And amidst the gloom, as you talked about, there really is a silver lining, and that silver lining is young people. And as many of you know, you can only say no to Dr. Chaudhary, to Professor Chaudhary, at the risk of offending really one of these stalwarts in the world of media today. And what he's done, I'm always amazed at the amount of energy that he has and the amount that he's done across the academic world to bring to the fore the professionalism that's needed in the world of media and visual arts and sciences. So thank you, Dr. Chaudhary. Thank you, Dr. Bhattacharya. Thank you, Professor Malik, for your opening statement. I'm going to take off from what Sunayan said in terms of painted the picture of the need to stand and fight. And Pradeep talked about how he was very much part of the system of. At some point, the grand old lady of Porbandar, as we used to know her by when we were, studying in school and later in university, and swore by what was printed in the Times of India, and of course the Illustrated Weekly and such other formidable mainstream papers, has unfortunately now fallen to the wayside for much of what we know to be historical issues. Within the historical issues of the need to be able to service your basic base of board members and investors, I think what is indelible here is the fact is that you need intent. And intent is what can bring about change. 2 days ago, or I think it was 2 days ago, I was watching on a number of news channels, Jaya Bachchan, a member of the Rajya Sabha, making a very impassioned plea to the chair about wanting a discussion on what had happened in the Rajya Sabha. Sadly, most television channels ran this very important piece by her and juxtaposed it against a singing and dancing visual of her daughter-in-law and actress and former Miss World, Aishwarya Rai Bachchan. When you want to be subversive, as today's media is subversive, this is what you do. You undermine the seriousness of any news offering by distracting and by what we are now seeing as cancel culture. If there was something called cancel culture or whataboutery, it was on clear display by every channel that paid obeisance to the masters of our time. And therefore, what is our responsibility? What is the responsibility of all of us, either in this panel or our 17 attendees from different parts of the world? I think our responsibility is to stand and fight every day for democracy, for our constitution. Our constitution today is one of the finest documents that's been put together in the last 100 years, and nothing can ever dilute that. Yes, Parliament from time to time has tried to dilute the very tenets on which our constitution has been built. But they're able to do so because we are unaware of the legacy of our constitution. We are unaware of the work that the Constituent Assembly did to bring about the Constitution. We're unaware as to the work that Dr. Ambedkar did by leading on the constitutional the Constitution as a charter. We're very happy to pay obeisance on Ambedkar's happy birthday, or Ambedkar Jayanti, by garlanding his many photographs of the length and breadth of this country. But very rarely has the occasion been used to actually examine the very principles on which this Constitution has been set about and founded. Our founding fathers, when they created and debated in the Constituent, every rule, every law, every aspect that we now see today which guides us, they did so keeping in perspective the time that they were in. They did so in keeping in perspective the struggles that they had been through. They did so by keeping in mind what they thought the future of our country would be. I don't think our founding fathers quite knew that the future of our country at various points of time would go through the throes of what every democracy does. The throes of doubt, the throes of questioning. Democracies, we must understand, is a messy business. Democracies, unlike oligarchies and unlike monarchies, where there is a particular principle, if you look around our neighbors, if you look not so far away to the Middle East, if you look all the way across to the other ends of the world, you will see that where there is an oligarchy or where there is a pretend democracy, as we are seeing today in the United States, which disempowers its constituents and does not allow them the legal validity of one person, one vote. What then can you say about a democracy? Does a democracy flow from the barrel of a gun, as it does in some countries? Does democracy flow from the extreme use of money power, as we are seeing today in India? When we talk about having a platform, as Sunayan said, a free and equitable platform, and I would add empathetic platform, because that's what we need in a democracy when you're listening to the other. That has been subverted. The very house that is supposed to debate a good law, and that is the responsibility of the legislature at the level of the state, at the local level, at the level of the panchayat, and at the level of the highest of the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. They're supposed to debate, and their responsibility is to create good law. And yet, we've seen in recent times, laws have been pushed through without debate. Laws have also been rescinded without debate. Is that the idea of a democracy? And within that, therefore, where does the role of media and where does the role of people like you and me, the average citizen, or as we say, the average Ram or the Ram, Rahim, and Jacob, what is this role about? When it comes to media, as Pradeep talked about, that, unfortunately, the organization that he was in was subverted. But why was it subverted? Why do people like him have to further than subvert by getting their agenda through having to subvert a subverted system? What is the role of the media today? The revolution that we're seeing, and we have seen a revolution. The revolutions, like most revolutions, will take some time to settle. And the revolution that we're seeing is the revolution of the digital media, which is to a large extent now put what we call the mainstream media at shame. The digital media today brings us news, fake or false or alternative narrative or true at real time. Somebody has got hit by a truck, you're being told. There's been a landslide, you're being told. The conventional media, as we are seeing it, which is the newspaper or print paper, that we've always believed it, or traditional media, is giving us the news with their painted narrative a day later. Television is subverting us by showing us juxtaposed images as and when they feel it necessary to do so. I mean, if Omicron is going to be our next big challenge, I would love to see how many news channels are devoting time on actual research and bringing us news from what's happening in South Africa, what's happening in the UK, or what has the latest scientific journal said, or what has the latest scientist said about the research that they've done. Today, much of media is conducted in the way that we are gathered today by armchair professors professing that they know everything from Afghanistan to Omicron, to the state of the world in the United States, to Spain's election, to France's impending election. We're all armchair media people. News gatherers in the way that they used to be, and as Justice Ramanna said the other day, investigative journalists are few and far in between. If they do investigate in the way that they should, they're either locked up and they become companions to comedians and others who perhaps want to bring to us an alternative narrative. Therefore, again, what is our role and responsibility as average citizens? In the world of narratives, of course, you have different narratives. You have the left, you have the right, you have the alt-left, you have the alt-right, you have the liberal, often juxtaposed as the liberal left, whatever that may mean. I certainly am a liberal. I certainly am not a card-bearing member of the left party and never have been. I can't be if I'm professing to be part of an organization and a company which has its roots across the world. It goes against the very tenets of communism and the left ideology. So what does this new term of left liberal mean? Our responsibility as people is to question. We need to question everything. If we get a forward, question it. What does it mean? Is it true? Is it appropriate? Can there be a different perspective? Can we offer an alternative perspective and place it out there? What is really interesting, and I saw this in Varanasi, we had our first physical festival a couple of weeks ago, the Mahindra Kabira festival in Varanasi. And the reason why we chose Varanasi for this Kabira festival 5 years ago or 6 years ago was primarily this. We said that if in the heart of UP, in the constituency, which is represented by the highest person in the land, the most powerful person in the land, we can bring about an understanding of India's syncretic traditions by referring to the philosophy of Saint Kabir or Sant Kabir, a 15th century saint who was adopted by a Muslim weaver family. He himself adopted a Hindu saint and then went on to preach and is seen to be representative of common sense philosophy from both sides of the divide. It was here a couple of weeks ago, I was having a conversation, and as many of you would know, the constituency has benefited enormously over these last few years by the largesse that any member of parliament must bestow upon their country. It's their responsibility, so I have no quarrel with that. And I kept speaking to a number of people over the years, and of course, the narrative that they have is a particular kind of narrative. But what was changed since the COVID pandemic and the disaster? So when I was speaking to a gentleman from the gullies of Varanasi, he said to me two things. And this is somebody who I've had many conversations with. He belongs to the dispensation, which is on the right. He's a member of the dispensation. And he said, Sanjay ji, please remember that we in Varanasi have lived together for hundreds of years. If you look at our history, as residents of Varanasi, of the old city, you will very rarely find an issue when it comes to an issue of disagreement between two communities. If there is an issue that's created, it's created by people from outside. It's not created by us. We have lived together and we will continue to live together despite the narrative that you may see and despite the narrative that we are supposed to represent. So that was the first. The second conversation was a former Home Secretary of the Central Ministry who was there with us. He'd come back from the city walk of Varanasi through the many gullies. And Dipesh, who was Professor Dipesh, who was the person who was taking our guests around to explain the history and the architecture and the built heritage that represents Varanasi, had said to them, the gullies of Varanasi in the old city were built in the way, winding and narrow, so that no invader could rush in, as they perhaps had done in an earlier time, and destroyed the city. And we then started talking about the Kashi Vishwanath temple, which, as many of you know, has been transformed into, well, not quite Disneyland, but it's got an interesting makeover. What was interesting again is that I explained to the gentleman in question, I said, did you know that Kashi is a town of 1,113 temples, of which 13 temples were always considered to be the principal temple. And for a whole period of time, Kashi was seen to be a Vaishnavite city, where Keshava was the presiding deity. And the Keshava deity still stands in the Keshava temple, still stands in what was the earlier Vaishnavite part of Varanasi, or the old city. It was Ahilyabai Holkar, as a young widow, who decided she needed to find a reason to be and a reason to exist. She donated land and set up in a Vaishnavite city, the Shaivite city, which we now know as the Kashi Vishwanath temple. At the same time, a Bibi, who also was a young widow, built what we now know as the Gyanvapi mosque adjoining. They did it simultaneously, roughly at the same time, again a representative of the syncretic traditions of this great city. It wasn't, and the reason I'm using the story, it wasn't necessarily to show or to delineate that it was to revenge or to avenge one or the other. Remember, the cities of Kashi Vishwanath, as most cities across the length and breadth of India, have seen many different conquering generals, whether it's the Mughals, whether it's been Shivaji's army, whether it's been Shivaji's generals, and so on and so forth. So it's been extraordinary. The history of our country is so interwoven that the minute you say that we want to follow Hindi as a language, you then wonder, should I travel to Bharatendu's Haveli in the heart of Varanasi to understand what is it that this Hindi was? Hindi was a derivative of, as we know, Braj Bhasha, Urdu, the existing Sanskrit languages that the Brahmins used, and so many other influences. He wanted a saral or an easy influence. Hindi in itself does not represent neither Hinduism, nor the Brahminical culture, nor the Vedic culture, nor the Puranas in any way. So again, when we're looking at listening to a narrative, listening to the media telling us that there are language wars, what are these language wars? Whose language are we talking about? My language may be English, but my mother tongue is Bengali. My language is not Hindi, and if at all, it's Sanskrit. I understand Sanskrit better than I understand Hindi. When I was in Turkey, we do an annual festival in Turkey. Did you know there's 1,019 common words between what we see as Hindi, which is a derivative of Urdu, and Hindustani and Braj Bhasha, and what we've obviously shared or received from Turkey and Iran and Iraq and all of the visitors that we've had to India. So when we talk about language, again, we need to understand it. And the reason I'm telling these stories is exactly this, that we take for granted that a narrative being put out either on WhatsApp by the WhatsApp University or whatever is the true narrative. What we don't do is question. And therein lies the single most important need of the moment, be it as a journalist or be it as us, as just regular people, the need to question. In any democracy or for any democracy to survive, one has to put the question to those who are governing us, not ruling us. The rule passed when India became independent in 1947. Our rulers marched out of the gateway of India in Bombay. We then adopted our new constitution in 1950, and we are governed by those who we choose to elect to govern us in our name. It is them that we must question day in and day out. And any government or any corporate or any parent or anybody who says that a question is a challenge to authority has no understanding of the basic principles of democracy. If you look at Switzerland as one of the most adequate definitions of a democratic country where every canton, every village, every area has its own decision-making process, which can go back and forth forever to take a decision or to get a referendum on even the simplest thing of should a pencil be 8 inches or 12 inches. That is a democracy which has been effective because people are vested in its decision-making powers. In the same way that Gandhiji said, you have to start from the village. It is the basic village constituency that has to be able to make decisions for itself. They shouldn't be ruled over and they shouldn't be dictated to. We talk about police force. Seriously? Police force? Police force to do what? Yes, we have a police service. The police is a service which is supposed to provide for and look after the interests of the citizens. Sadly, they are used as a police force, which does everything for the masters that be and do very little, as we've seen across the length and breadth of the country in recent times, for the citizens for whom they're supposed to work and who pay for their salaries. Until and unless we start looking at some of these issues every second, every day, every minute, and question and read and write and profess and put out your opinions and challenge them, we're not going to be able to do what Dr. Sunayan said, move forward to a better tomorrow. Our generation, I think, has failed young people, and I've said this often. Our agendas were different. But I hope and I believe that younger people have a completely different objective from us. They have the empathy, they have the understanding, and I believe that they do treasure and they do think that democracy is something worth fighting for. In order to be able to ensure that that's a legacy that continues, we here today and every media person collectively, irrespective of what it means, whether you lose your life like Gauri did, or you lose your freedom like so many, like Kappal is today, even today is in jail. Our responsibility to our profession is to ensure that we question. And when we find the answer, we put it out as it is, without necessarily building in our narrative, our agenda, or our prejudice. That in the old times was restricted to editorial pages. So you knew and you differentiated between what was news, which is reportage, investigative news, and a commentary, where you can, of course, put out your perspective of the world or the times that we are, which is the editorial pages. Today, sadly, those pages have got blurred. Those lines do not exist. And in fact, if at all they exist to the contrary, which is every producer and every anchor is seen to be creating the news story of the day to suit their narrative of the time. In 2022, we will be going through a number of elections, and of course, we'll see the same. EVMs are good, EVMs are bad. Elections were fair, elections were not fair. Again, I'm saying our responsibility is question what you read. Not everything passed in this new electoral bill by Parliament is bad. Yes, some of it is problematic, but the fact that the Election Commission has said that every party must put out the criminal record of the person standing for election and must provide a justification of why that person has been chosen is a step in the right direction. Will newspapers and the media cover those in the way that they should? Well, that is for us to see. Once again, thank you, Professor Chaudhary. Thank you, Dr. Bhattacharjee. Thank you, Dr. Malik and Dr. Chakrabarti. And thank you all for watching and listening patiently. I'm sorry if my call to you has really been about a call to action, just simple question, and hopefully you will find your own truth. Your truth and my truth will never be the same, possibly. Or my truth and Dr. Sunan's, Dr. Indranil Chakravarti's truths will be different. But that is truth, right? Every incident can be seen to from a different perspective. We bring our lineage, our history, our past into understanding a particular truth. What we must know is that truths can stand side by side. It's not necessarily only about your way or the highway. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, sir. I mean, it was, for some moment, I don't have any words to say, because, you caught the exact vibe of the moment, should I say. I go to the extent of saying that, this is probably what the young generation understands and they express, in multiple forums. I often tell my students in my class that question everything, question your family, question your parents, question every damn thing that you have around you. And this is something that I've been telling my students for a while now, and I'm pretty sure that they're doing it as well. Because as you rightly say, that this generation is a better generation, and they know exactly how they have to conduct in this world. Thank you so much, sir. And it was absolute privilege listening to you, absolute privilege listening. And I'm pretty sure this is the case with every other panelist and attendees as well. Thank you. Now,
Shurayan, it's difficult for me and others who are coming after Mr. Roy to say something extra, because he has said everything. As a critical media theorist, I think he has already said everything. Whatever.
Right.
Sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I'm sure. Everyone has a perspective, and that's what we are trying to figure out. Everyone has an individual perspective, and that is what we are trying to find out. Anyway, so the next in line for this session is eminent media educator Dr. Indranil Chakrabarti, who is an expert on media and labor issues. Indranil Chakrabarti holds a PhD in information and media studies from the Western University in Canada. His research interests include media, technology, labor, and South Asia. As a Horizon postdoctoral fellow at Concordia University, he is examining how deindustrialization, a very important term for that matter, and reindustrialization in the North American retail sector are changing the laboring population's everyday life experiences. He also teaches at the Lawrence Kinlin School of Business under Fanshawe College in Canada. He has also worked over a decade as a journalist with prominent South Asian newspapers like the Financial Express and the Indian Express. His monograph, Invisible Labor, Support Service Workers in India's Information Technology Industry, was published in 2012 by Routledge. Indeed, Dr. Chakraborty, the podium is all yours.
Thank you, Shunan. And thank you, my old friend Ujjwal, for inviting me to be one of the panelists here. It's really wonderful to be part of this panel. And after hearing Mr. Roy, I'm seriously think that he has already said what I would like to present here. But Mr. Roy said a very important thing, that we need to question and reminding our responsibilities as media theorists, as media practitioners, as media researchers. So the theme that creating an alternative paradigm in media praxis is a very important theme in today's world. Given, like, I live a few hundred kilometers from a country where there are millions of anti-vaxxers and where Donald Trump's ideology rules the nation. So this is the kind of situation we are in. And now, I am a critical media theorist, and what I mean by critical media theorist, is that I as a critical media theorist questions the every paradigm, discourse, and ideology. So that's the beginning of my research. And we need research to formulate policy. We need research to fight this fake news, to fight this anti-democratic tendencies, to fight all this kind of situation where what rules is very right-wing ideology. So my research, when I start, first research was on support service workers in information technology industry. So I had this book, which was published recently by Routledge. And this book is about the people who work as support service workers in India's information technology industry. Who are these workers? They are housekeeping and janitors, food service workers, security guards, and drivers. And I call this as invisible labor. Their labor is invisible because their labor is never recognized. We know what Indian IT industry is all about. So let me share my slide with you. I believe it's okay, Shunan. Just 1 minute. Okay. So the phenomenal growth of the IT industry, Indian IT industry between 1980 and 2020, suggests its dominance in the story of India's development and its integration with the global economy during the period. In 1979-80, the industry's combined revenues were $150 million. By 2016 and 17, the revenues had touched $154 billion. And in 2021, the projection was 195 billion. And it achieved a kind of 190 billion. However, here in my research, my intention is to go beyond the numbers and analyze the contribution of the new industry in shaping the work, culture, sociality, and identity of the people who are associated directly or indirectly with computers, servers, and softwares. So here, what I'm doing is that, in the research I did, is that I'm looking at the life of these IT workers who work in these glass buildings, in the IT enclaves in Bangalore, Delhi, Hyderabad, Pune, Calcutta. And who are these workers? So they are kind of the housekeeping and janitors, food service workers, security guards, and they are the drivers. The drivers who take IT people, IT professionals from home and to the office and office back home. So I did a study across 5 Indian cities, and my sample size was around, let's say, around 106, and where the minimum age was 16 and maximum 56. And then you have a gender, oh, sorry, I think something is happening. That 1 minute. Is it okay, Shunan? Slides, okay. And gender wise, it's 67% male and 33% female. And then out of that, 63% of workers are married, 91% they're literate, and 25% have post-secondary education, and 75% is a first generation migrant. So most of these workers have come from village in the rural areas. And in terms of ethnicity and religion, we can see this, that they're basically general caste 36%, backward class is 33%, and then, oh, there is a problem. This is difficult for me to control.
Inlinda, what you can possibly do is you can press F5, then it will be full screen. In that case, it will be easier for you.
Yes. Now it's fine. This is easier for me. Yeah. And schedule tribe is around 17%. But one thing is important to understand, that in this kind of job where average income, monthly income is in 2018 was around 10,000 rupees. There's upper caste Hindus comprise of 36%. So that's an interesting revelation to me. And we can see the sample size, like landless peasant is 7.5%, peasant is 43.4%, the class background from where these people have come from. Now, coming to the cities, the migrant workers enter into new social relationships, an opportunity to belong to organization associations different from their family, kinship, community-based engagements. The exchanges open up a universe that is qualitatively different from their experience as rural inhabitants. Unknown faces become friends. Union membership at the workplace and social media platforms create their public image. Sports club and cultural group provide respite from their work monotony and intimacy. With media, gadgets, apps, and branded goods confirm their urban status. A new home and the world pops up in front of their eyes. However, this is not a straightforward transition from an old to new network of social relations that shape their ideology, outlook, and conversation. It is neither a grafting of traditional ideologies over the workers' family values, norms, and beliefs by an ideology of positive individualism. The new relationships create an identity, a transition from being a country person to become a city dweller who over time becomes a part of a hyper-competitive environment by selling his or her labor. So this is important to understand the India's post-80s globalization phenomena. Huge migration happened. People have moved to the cities, and all these people, they are coming from basically from a poor background. And what happened after they have arrived here? Two things have happened. They got a salary. Most of this, I'm talking about the support service workers, between 8 to 12,000 rupees. They have something good in their life. They can send their children to the schools. And in any way, it's a better life compared to their village life. Okay, that we have to understand. And to some cases, there is kind of health benefits, and they have pension plan in their work area. But precarity is there, and huge precarity, as you can see from the weekly hours of work. And also we can see from the mean wage rate and the median wage rate they earned. Now, there are two things that I'd like to discuss. One is the class relations when they arrived here, and the second that I want to discuss is the caste relationship. For these workers, the class relations, underclass relations, traditional values, beliefs, and norms, and the subjective components largely influence their socialization process. However, the workers do not live only by ideology alone. They have to work to survive. So you have to eat, and then you can profess your ideology. That's a very basic thing in human life. Their stories of economic movement in the semi-informal employment scenario are about their relations based on contestation, negotiation, and capitulation with contractors, managers, and technology executives. So most of these workers, almost all the 100% outsourced workers. So neither Microsoft, Tech, or Infosys, Wipro, all these big companies, they don't engage these workers as their own employees. They outsource the job to the contractors. So that's an important thing to understand. And what that means is that there is at times the workers realize the limits of any individual initiatives, especially when they're organizing to form a union or fighting for a wage increase. Often companies take advantage of their flexible employment conditions against any collective solidarity. For example, Ram Prakash, who works as security guard in all by himself, when he faces injustice in his organization, he wants to join a union. But this requires the formation of a union in his workplace, which he feels is impossible. Ram Prakash said that we had a union. If we had a union, they would not let it survive. They would force the person who tries to start one to resign. They are a big company. The security guard job market is such that if one person leaves a job, there are 10 to fill in this place. So a union can never be formed. The workers will be forced to resign if they try to form one. They will accuse him of something and force him to resign. G4S is a big company. It is impossible for union security guards to be formed. So Ram Prakash works for G4S. I think it's in Gurgaon. He works for the IT company TCS. There are other companies who prevent workers from acting together in the time of crisis. One such strategy is to use technique of modern human resource management of assuaging workers' feelings through friendly overtones or to provide individual favors. So this is a kind of class relationship where these workers are into. Now I'll move to the caste relationship and loyalties. And as we all know, caste as a religious and cultural practice oppresses as well as divides communities. It also has a power to forge cohesion within the same caste. So caste has a cohesive feature as well as it divides the communities. The caste-based identity becomes an oasis of love, fraternity, and resistance in a social environment fractured by a predatory social and economic power structure. Caste loyalties gain in commitment the more localized and particularized they get. It is not enough to be a Brahmin, but but to be a Brahmin of certain endogamous jati. And that's very important in jobs where you live together at a place where different kind of caste and communities, they come and live together in a geographical space. In many cases, this may not enough either, and the further subdivisions are necessary. Though we can see the advantage that these people who have come from the village and have a stable, more or less stable job and a place to live, we have seen that there are divisions within them, and that also create a barrier to form a kind of collective action. Kapil is a Brahmin from a village near Samastipur in Bihar. He says that he has two lives. One who goes back, one when he goes back to visit his parents during Holi, and other when he lives in Gurgaon or Gurugram. Kapil says that in a village, in my village, I abide by all caste rules. Here I had a different lifestyle. I have friends who are from lower caste, and I don't mind having food with them when they invite me to the place. So I asked him, what is good thing about caste? Do you think caste is relevant to your life in the city? Kapil says, this is part of our 1,000 years of tradition. Unlike in my village, in cities, caste doesn't affect our public life. But once we are at home, we follow our caste rules. So this is the kind of ambivalence that the workers are living with, that they think that there is one rule in the city and another rule going back to the village. It would not be fruitful to find the meaning of this conversation rooted in the rural-urban cultural binary. The profane city versus virtuous village. Neither will be locating the country and city differences in powerful hostile associations that have developed of the city as an achieved center, a place of noise, worldliness, and ambition, and on the country as a place of backwardness, ignorance, and limitation. Here, I believe Raymond Williams would help us to understand the relationship with the city, the workers' relationship with the city. For example, the workers have their roots in a culture based on traditional and collective values whose social life gets its sustenance from idealized kinship and religious wisdom. But a city is not a wicked place for them. The workers and their family want their children to grow up in the city as they realized the city has gathered the idea of an achieved center of learning, communication, and light. And this is very important. I interviewed so many of the workers, and very few, they want to go back to the village, to their traditional lifestyle. They want to have the both in the city. The flourishing IT industry in the metropolises offers workers an escape from a life defined by poverty and drudgery. This is a drastic change from their part-time or seasonal employment on a farm or in a local factory, where besides long hours and unsafe working conditions, especially for women, workers depend on the employer's mercy to receive even the legally mandated minimum wage. Based on their past economic situations, it is rational to opt for employment as an outsourced worker in the IT industry. For workers, the act of rationality to comprehend reality is a painful journey. It's not an easy journey for them. They're trying to adjust the city life with their traditional values. It's fractured by struggle, contradiction, and ambivalence. These complex and varied sociological and psychological states reveal themselves in interviews through the narration of their everyday communicative experiences in dealing with their spouses, children, employers, colleagues, or even bus conductors. It is tempting to refer to social transition of these workers as moving into a new stage of capitalist modernity, from a state of traditional communitarian culture to a journey from an authentic state of communal existence to a degraded world of individual consumer culture. However, this is a false dichotomy. And as we know in media research in India, many theorists have tried to do that, creating a binary between the tradition of the village and modern culture in the cities. And I think this is not right to do. The present ethnography, my research, shows that workers have variegated responses to social and cultural displacements. Between the universality of global order and the heterogeneity of cultural experience, there are disquieting moments to grapple with mundane issues of life, such as bread and employment. There are moments when support service workers face the ambiguities and paradoxes of capitalist modernity's promise of equality, liberty, and fraternity. So on the one hand, they have an aspiration that their children will become IT professionals. On the other hand, the kind of money they get, like 8 to 12,000 rupees, after working kind of 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 days a week or 6 days a week, it's not enough to sustain that family. So there is an aspiration, and they believe that city will deliver its promise. And when they don't deliver, that there are many things can happen. And I will not say that obviously that workers will create unions and will rise against their employees. That's very uncertain things to happen. But there are possibilities, and these possibilities we can't just kind of understand without understanding that there are ambivalence and ambiguities in their life, being a migrant from village to the city. So that's the research that I did. And as Mr. Roy says, that we should always question what is there in reality. What is there in reality is not something always what should be. We should try to create a future based on our understanding of reality through our research practices, media practices. Thank you.
Thank you, Indranilda. It was of a different level altogether. And you basically summed up the labor problem in India with these very few slides. And I think there's a lot to learn from this, and it's a lot of myth busting as well. Your research, the research study that you did, busted a lot of myths. I'm pretty sure. There's a lot of misconceptions about labor in this country. So from that perspective itself, and you talked about discrimination. In a way, it talks about intersectionality as well, I believe. And intersectionality is something that I teach my students every other day. Like, for example, the existence of multiple identities of an individual. So here, exactly at this point, I would like to bring in someone who comes from the northeastern part of the country. He's young. He's very young. He's dynamic. He's a civil servant for that matter. But more than that, more than a civil servant, he is someone who's passionate about that region. And he will talk about that region for that matter. Yes, I'm talking about Mr. Anurag Rudra, who will be our keynote speaker for the day. He's been in Assam Civil Service. He's currently the Assistant Commissioner of Kamrup Metropolitan District. He has interests spread across public policy, communication, and governance. Prior to this engagement, he was director of the University of Science and Technology in Meghalaya, where he shaped a flagship undergraduate course in governance and public policy. Very interesting for that matter. He was member of the advisory board panel for Central Board of Film Certification that all of us are aware about. And he's currently setting up Octave Alliance, a public policy think tank with a Northeast Indian prism. He visits a few universities to teach occasionally and is working on his first book of nonfiction and his first collection of poetry. Over to you, Anurag, and I'm sure you will represent the Northeast fairly well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sunen Bhattacharjee, Dr. Sanjay Roy, Dr. Indra Chakraborty, Dr. Malik, Dr. Chaudhary. I think, before I start, this is a curious case of, many Dr. Jekylls and one unfortunate Dr. Hyde right here. I mean, it's such an august audience and it's such an august gathering, and we have so many distinguished panelists who have spoken at length. about many different topics, and I really am a bit that nervous. I wouldn't be lying if I said I would be a bit nervous to speak in under such an August, gathering. I think first of all, this conclave and this format is actually very interesting. I mean, I was at university earlier, and we have a lot of these webinars and seminars and conferences, but I think bringing together people from different disciplines, different verticals of the same industry, I think this is unprecedented. And I think I think after entering the civil services, serving close to a year, my brain had really dumbed down quite a bit. I think after a long time, I'm getting another shot in my brain. Anyway, starting on what I'll talk about, though I'm not very sure exactly what I'll talk about. I do have a few ideas in mind, but as it happens when you listen to such an august deliberation, especially what Dr. Roy spoke about, I think you really lose the desire to speak and you want to listen more. And with Dr. Chakravarti bringing forward his research, on labor laws and labor issues, which also we face on a day-to-day basis, being in the services. Uh, these are things presented very holistically, whereas we have earlier parts of it in the course of our service. But I'll try to pick up where Dr. Roy, the much respected Dr. Roy, left off, and he spoke of different perspectives, if I'm not mistaken. And being a student of literature, I remember this one speech by one of my most favorite authors, Chimamanda Adichie from Nigeria, and she spoke of the dangers of a single story, if I'm not mistaken, right? And how a single all-encompassing true story that is supposed to be the holy grail regarding any issue or any matter is actually detrimental to individual, not only individual liberty, but I think also the liberty of saying an individual existence as well. Any certain story, any paradigm, any narrative, any ideology, any political alignment that says that it is the be all and end all, and it is the goal yardstick in as far as human existence concerned is detrimental to individual existence as well. It's demeaning to an individual existence. And I'll not go to higher things like freedom of speech and individual expression. I think for a basic individual, having the multiplicity of opinion, having the multiplicity of thought, and to that extent, I can say that even being on this panel, there are things I may not agree with completely. Even with Dr. Bhattacharya at many points of time earlier when I was in college, we have had difference of opinions, but we've continued to remain good friends. I think that is what is the essence of a modern, liberal, democratic, civil, constitutional existence, and I think which is now fraying at the ends in certain respects. Unfortunately, my job doesn't allow me to speak much, but fortunately, it allows me to have a conscience. So, and keeping that rather fortified and at bay, I would like to say a few things, especially about Northeast and the place where I come from. Now, I am a Bengali. The children, the progeny of refugees who migrated from erstwhile Bangladesh into Assam, into Barak Valley, rather, which is not again the Bengali part of Assam. It's more like the Sylheti part of Assam. We speak a very distinctly different language, distinct from Bengali. My very good friend Anshuman, who's now doing his PhD, says, Anurag, we have a new word to call ourselves. We can call ourselves subaltern. That sounds cooler than being called as Sylheti. So, I mean, these perceptions of identity were matters of jokes, and this was something I didn't really fathom, or I was not able to wrap my head around those things. I wouldn't say that I have been able to do so now. But now, being in the government and seeing how policy is framed, I realize how ineffective I think policy is to deal with such cultural issues, to deal with issues of conflict, and how policy is woefully inadequate to address issues. And I think it is not a fault of the present government or the government before that. I think it's a very colonial institution. The first and the foremost thing would be if today I were to go next year, this year, incidentally, I'm also heading a thing in the government we really fawn upon called the census. And the census itself is an instrument of the colonial era that I find to be rather a bit dicey. Now, these identities, these frozen identities of being a Bengali or being an Assamese or, of being in Assam, we have this very famous word called Guiputro or Kilonjia. I mean, basically, mean the son of the soil, whosoever that might be. these tags, these tags, these idioms, this story, this single story that, Anurag is a Bengali or is this, it's rather thin. And this is the source of all the problems because, as Sunanda will very well know, because though I might be a Bengali, I studied in a policy that was prevalent in Assam. So it is not by chance or by accident.
Anurag, I think we've lost you for a second. I'm not sure whether it's me or.
Just 1 second. Yeah,
Yeah,
should I repeat? I'm sorry.
If
So
you can repeat, that will be
all I'm
great.
saying, yes, I'll do that. So I'm saying that, for example, I'm branded a Bengali. The policy of the state or the sense of the state, I'm talking as a Bengali speaking citizen of the state. Right. The point is, I am a Bengali speaking citizen, which then was thought to be the best instrument of addressing the Bengali and the Assamese conflict that was happening in the 60s. And as a consequence of that, I had, I studied Hindi because I was in, again, as a part of the three language policy, we were allowed to study Bengali or maybe Assamese or maybe one of the modern Indian languages. Now, these policy issues have woefully been looked over, they have been glossed over, and they are actually at the heart of what we are calling now, ethnic conflict. We are very beautifully branding it as ethnic conflict, but these issues have originated from the colonial period and they perpetuate till this day. Therefore, what I feel, what I feel as to how policy is inadequate to solve the problems of the Northeast is because it will require a systemic change that will need a relooking at the census, which itself was an attempt to enforce what I heard is called a brand of silo nationalism, like your nationality is put into silos. I'm not an academician, so I may be going wrong with what I'm saying. And second, what I feel that more than the silo nationalism and the branding of identity of being either Bengali, Assamese, tribal, non-tribal, sixth schedule, non-sixth schedule, all these things, I think what was really important was to enforce the academic perception of what Benedict Anderson very wonderfully calls an imagined community. Now, when I'm looking at all these issues, sitting in the chair of a administrator, that itself is a job that's waiting to go very soon on a different note. But anyway, being in the civil services, when we look at voter lists, when we look at the issue of the D voter, for example, in Assam, the doubtful voters who are neither Indians nor foreigners, they're stuck. In Kashmir, they have this half widows. I think in Assam, we have this half voters, so to speak, who are neither Indian citizens who are eligible to vote, neither are the foreigners. We have issues of illegal immigration, we have issues of language. And I think that more than policy, it is important for citizen centric initiatives to come up and try to bring reconciliation, which is why this idea of Octave Alliance, which I'm calling a think tank for use of a better parlance, is actually a citizen-driven forum where me and a few of my friends from different states and different communities will try to get together and we will try to bring out certain commonalities, certain areas where maybe we can go towards resolution. The book which Dr. Bhattacharya spoke of, my first book, which I'm working on, and I think which has become a work in perpetual existence, and it's a work in perpetual progress, is on the issues of identity and politics and how, other than government policy, we need to have a look into an academia and a government interface to solve this. I think, what's happening in other developed countries of the world, even in conflict management, even in peace and conflict studies, we are taking feedback from academicians, we're taking feedback from practitioners. I think Dr. Roy would be one, very eminent person who has seen it from very close angle, as Dr. Chakraborty. But unfortunately, when framing a policy or when I'm implementing a policy as a civil servant. I'm a very young civil servant now at the bottom of the pecking order, but let's say hypothetical 20 years down the line, or even as a member of parliament or as an MLA, I think that academia, government or academia policy interface is woefully missing, because of which our policies are neither scientifically designed nor properly executed, and which leads to a half-hearted attempt. So yes, we are able to control conflicts, but they respawn from time to time because we have not been able to hit them in the head. What I say, what Dr. Roy said, that individual action is very important, and I feel this more after entering the government. That individual action, be it towards conciliation, be it towards resistance, it might be towards any direction that an individual feels fit, is of extreme importance. there was a point of time, when someone would question me about my identity, uh, I feel confused. I've written at times about this, whether I'm a Assamese, whether I'm Bengali. When I was in college, which was supposed to be the hotbed of Assamese nationalism, Cotton University in Guwahati, I would always say I'm an Assamese because I genuinely believe that. People from Barak Valley say, "Arey, why do you say you're an Assamese, you're a Bengali?" And I'd always be in tatters as to what I would answer. But I think after a point of time, I have learned one thing: it's very important to be accepting of your own identity because policy won't let you be. So I can proudly proclaim if I'm an Assamese or a Bengali or anything at all. And I think there needs to be a very strong understanding of the issues of the Northeast. I'm at the cost of sounding like an activist. I will say the rest of India needs to understand the nuances and the dynamics of Northeast because we are actually right now, if you see, the conflicts across India have died down more or less. In the Northeast, the conflicts are still continuing. The insurgency might have died down, but I can assure you, insurgencies can be controlled. But ideas of division, ideas of conflict are still as much alive as they were perhaps 30 years ago. And if we do not find a common solution to this problem of mainland versus northeast, of tribal versus non-tribal, of language versus language, I think the entire crux of the government's policy, which is actually quite good in terms of the Act East policy. America is talking of pivot to the east. All of this will fall flat if we are not able to bring basic humanistic condition, basic peace and order and reconciliation among the communities. I think it's high time that we look at it. And I think I'll just end with a very small uh, personal observation. I'm perhaps the least educated here in this entire group, but I found something on the street, and I think I'll say about this. So we have Mahapurush Srimanta Hankardeva, who's supposed to be the doyen saint of Assamese Neo-Vaishnavism, right? And Srimanta Hankardeva came in at a time when there were multiple conflicts across different dynasties, the Ahoms, the Kosaris, the Mughals. There were small vassal kingdoms at loggerheads with each other. And the Ahoms had very eminent advisors, bureaucrats, maybe, they had the equivalent of the cabinet secretary at that time, the Boragohas, the Buragohas, very eminent men of letters who tried to bring policy to correct these conflicts, but all of them failed. So then comes this person called Srimanta Hankardeva, who was again a contemporary of Sant Kabir Das, and who traveled all across India and saw what the Bhakti movement was doing. And he picked up his symbols and he picked up his Borgit and he sang and danced his way through the entire state. And I think what Srimanta Shankardeva could do, if we see from a communication point of view, he did not have a Facebook or Twitter account, or neither was he live streaming, nor was he, giving podcasts. But within a span of few years, he managed to integrate Assam, bring a common ideology and bring peace to the entire land. He managed to get tribals within the caste system by making them Horonias, giving them Sharan basically. And he forged a very synthetic identity just with the power of arts and culture. After all the talk of GDP, after the talk of policy, all high sounding things, and gender mainstream and reconciliation, I think it is art and culture, music, literature, which will ultimately pave the way for individual voices, which will culminate into a sane public voice. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anurag. Thank you so much. In fact, no one could have brought it better than you. This is this fundamental conundrum that we always face, and as Anurag knows that both of us come from the same region of the country. But am I an Assamese who stays, who speaks Bengali, or am I a Bengali who stays in Assam? This is the fundamental conundrum that we have been facing for years now. What is our identity? What exactly is our status in this country? Why are we supposed to show our papers to the entire country to prove that I'm an Indian citizen? This fundamental conundrum, people are unaware about the history of that part of the country. They do not even know that we have been staying in that part of the country for 1400 years. We do not have to show our papers. This is something that we have been facing for years now, and Anurag brought it out in a very empathetic way. I for that matter, when I talk about these things, I possibly cannot control my emotions, but Anurag successfully did that, and I must congratulate him for doing that. So thank you, Anurag, and I know that you have this assignment, so thank you for giving your speech, and it's a very erudite talk for that matter, and I'm sure a lot of people would have known about the Northeast from what you said. And I'm sure you can leave now. And okay, so moving ahead.
Dr. Chakravarti wants to make a point. Dr. Chakravarti.
So thank you, Anurag. I think this is really an interesting, you raise an interesting point. Being a migrant, a global migrant, I have seen the issues with the Indians living here. Am I a Canadian? Am I an Indian? Am I a Bengali? My parents came from Bangladesh. Okay. So my father never considered himself as an Indian, but as a Dhaka Bikrampuria. Okay. So that's the interesting part. And another interesting part is that one of my friends who now live in New Zealand, so his two sons, they went around when they were kind of class 2 and class 4 from here. And then recently the two Indian spinners played two Indian spinners who are New Zealanders played exceedingly well. And so my friend's children, the two boys, they're asking their father, okay, he could be an Indian, but he's a New Zealander. He defeated India. So I am so proud of this two person. He defeated India. They are in, like, when the match happens, they always side with New Zealand team. They never side with the Indian team. Okay. And then I tell them, your sons are anti-nationalist. So, but then he asked me, then what about the Patel, the spinner who bowled out Indian team? Are they anti-nationalist? This is a very interesting thing. Thank you, Anurag, because raising this issue also raised the whole theory of nation state. You know, nation state wants to have a single identity, be anywhere in the world. They want to, because to rule, you need a single identity. But we don't have single identities. We have multiple identities. I speak Bengali, I speak little of French, I speak English. I have many friends who are in different religion, ethnicity group. So that's, thank you for raising this. It's really great to hear.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for bringing up the point. Yeah. So, you know, we all are talking about discrimination, and at multiple levels for that matter. I think that's the crux of this, you know, journey today. Anyway, so we will move on now. You know, and I will call upon the person who will represent the corporate side of media now. You know, while we are emphasizing on academics, and it is important, it is equally important to know the industry. Just that we are attuned to the professional media practices, we have amongst us Jaya Prasad, who is an acclaimed communication expert. She is the founder and CEO of 19 Dots. She's amongst us, and she is also a managing partner at Service Plan India. Jaya has been in the advertising and communication industry for the past 20 years. She loves to write, travel, and also do photography. Jaya, if you are there, the podium is all yours.
Yeah, thank you. I heard a lot, and thank you for the opportunity, UKC sir and Mr. Bhattacharya. It was a very interesting session to hear Mr. Roy and Mr. Chakrabarti, you know, two different things, like we don't question things. I think it was really nice. And Mr. Chakrabarti talked about all the, you know, the migration and stuff like that. So it was really nice. And I was listening to Mr. Rudra, you know, really intently, because of course, like I have lived abroad and I also like migrated, and I have so many other identities today. So what I'm going to talk about, since it's the end of the year, I've prepared a few slides of how technology is going to affect us. So I picked up 5 important, you know, technologies, because I just had 10 minutes. And UKC sir has requested me to also speak on what are the kind of talent which is actually required in the digital media. So first I'll share my presentation, and then I will talk about what kind of talent are we actually looking at in the digital media space today. So let me just share my screen. Can I just share my screen now? Because I think you'll have to move on.
Administrator, can you please allow her to share the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can now, I suppose.
Okay.
Can you?
No, I'm not able to.
Okay, host kindly allow or make co-host, make Jaya Prasad the co-host, and keep the focus. There are 2 more.
So
Can you do now?
I'll just try.
Salim. Sure.
Okay, so basically today we are at, is it still available? I don't know. Okay, anyway.
Host,
Jaya,
kindly allow.
if you want, I have your presentation.
Yeah,
Should I play
yeah,
from
sure.
my
It would be good. If you can just do a full screen, it would be nice for everybody to read, because I cannot speak so much. Yeah.
I'll just play your presentation from my end itself. Can you see?
Yeah.
Your
You just have to do a full screen on the view. When you go on the view,
yeah.
just go for the full screen, please. Yeah, and then
Right now.
So there are a lot of technology changes which are basically affecting our world today, and there are a lot of technology, which is actually there, but only the popular ones are going to actually survive, which is basically the ones which are going to be, used by the people and, become a part of the culture. For example, the smartphone and so on. I've just picked up the 5 digital innovations, which I feel is going to be really impactful in today's time, especially the post, Corona times. So one is basically, which is to do with Internet of Senses. Today, when we are on the digital world, can you just do the second slide, please?
Yeah.
So we are living in the world of constant change, and there are many technologies out there. So what I want to talk about is the Internet of Senses. So we are right now only about the sight, which is basically what we can actually see and hear. So we have now social media also, which is becoming very popular, is Clubhouse, and also by Spotify, another one, which is again on the sound. So people are now adapting to new technologies more faster, in a much better way. I'd request you to please keep changing the slides. Thank you. So idea and technology is what is going to rule. If you have a great idea which can be married with any good technology, that is going to be popular. Also help a huge amount of social engagement with any kind of idea which I feel can be the future. Can you just change the next one, please? So the 5 digital innovation, which I thought would be interesting because it's the end of the year and we must look forward to, these are right now being tested. So Ericsson has come up with the Internet of Senses, which is basically when we can, do immersive kind of touch and feel, products, and also move physically, with the AR and VR to the world where you can actually, buy products, merging the physical world. So we all know about the AR and VR. Can you go to the next slide, please? So we know the AR is there, the VR is there, the haptics is there, robotics has also come in. But when we have the Internet of Senses, this is the next level of VR where you're actually going to have the mind, smell, and sight, and taste and touch, and also the sound together. So which is basically also available on this Ericsson site. If you actually go and see, there is a very interesting presentation on this. Can we move to the next one, please? So Internet of Senses is all about how we can, feel and hear right from the convenience of our homes. Next slide, please. So over here, when we are moving from the world to the 5G world, it is basically going to be the internet, which is basically materializing all the genes. So you can actually, buy everything, a product which you can actually, experience. So in a way, it's merging the physical world with technology. And we also have now hyper, a cloud. Cloud technology is there, but now we have something called hyper cloud by Google. By all these things together, the new world seems to be more merging of our senses, more fully immersive, and more multisensory. So it's going to be the next generation devices where you will have technological advances sensors to make XR experiences more towards reality and more closer to you. So your mind becomes, the area of possibilities. For example, whatever you are thinking will be predictable, and that will be an environment which will be created for you, which is pretty interesting to actually imagine. Can we move to the next one, please? So this is the visualization, for say 2030, where your brain is becoming an interface of all the things. Actually, predictive science is already being used by Facebook and other social network social sites, where they are actually showing you the ads through your behavior pattern of what you have shared, what are the things that you have actually browsed. So it's already there, and we are using a huge amount of prediction when we are actually doing digital advertising on these social networking platforms. This is a little more advanced stuff. In fact, we used VR 3-4 years back when we were doing one of the experiential events for BMW Motorrad, where we had actually created an immersive experience where you can actually feel the air and everything when you're actually, riding and feeling the bike in a certain, AR experience. So this is already being experimented, and it will actually be going to the hands of the people. So it's pretty interesting. And if you like, you can actually read on the Ericsson site. The next slide, please. So this is what, as I explained you, the brain is going to be the interface, the way we listen to, how we speak to others, everything, will be added. And 51% of, this is very interesting because this entire research is being made of what, the consumers are expecting out of their phones, which is 51% of people expect to have device that transmit sound directly to their brains. And consumers expect an internet of senses, So this is where we are actually, moving towards. The next one, please. Another one which I felt was very interesting for everybody to know is matter. So I was working on Mirai, which is basically, Mirai is the connected devices, which is being launched by Panasonic, which is all your devices in your home, which is basically your smart home, a software to hardware, everything would be connected on your device. So for example, you are sitting, say in the office or elsewhere, and you've forgotten to switch off the lights in your home. So Mirai is going to make it possible. Already we have Alexa, but Matter is another level. So this is being developed together with Amazon, Google, and Apple. So can we go to the next one, please? Next slide, please. So this is the foundation for connected things. It's still not there. It's an open space. And it's a very interesting alliance which has taken place, where you're going to use high, best-in-class contributions for your smart home technologies from all these largest 5 technology players, which is Amazon, Apple, Google, and they have formed this entire, alliance to launch this, which is the foundation for connected things. And there are other companies in the race who are actually developing their own connected software, which is going to rule the lives of many people. Now, the next one, please. This is an experiment by Microsoft. So last year we were working on Microsoft on many things, which was basically an internal briefing. And this is how I came to know about the smart tattoos. So smart tattoos is basically merging, your devices and art form, where you can actually control each and every experience from, these printed tattoos, and these are temporary and you can actually change them. So this is also another interesting part, which can we go to the next one, please? Slide. So this is basically more towards fashion. Sustainability is something like you would not be using too much of, devices because you want to control things on your own. So this is another one which I feel would be very important in terms of functionality and how people, the young generation who's actually going to be there would be very interested to have something which is fashionable as well as an interactive stuff which is wearable. The next one, please. We all know about the smartphones, but there is an interesting product for the last 5-6 years, and university at Oxford has been doing a huge amount of research, and a lot of other US universities. This is called graphene. This product is basically 200 times more stronger than steel. And China has already developed a foldable phone, which is basically flexible enough for your touchscreen. So the next generation of the smart devices probably would be made out of graphene, which is the OLED TV which you have. So all these products will become foldable. Still, you can actually search about foldable phone. I think Samsung is the first one to introduce one, which is basically going inside your pocket and actually opens up into a large iPad kind of experience. So graphene would be the product and the most interesting thing to be used even for outer space. So can we go to the next one, please? So it's called the Wonder material. It's one atom thicker layer of carbon atoms arranged in hexagonal lattice. And it's pretty interesting. Graphene is also, graphite, is also for diamonds. So that's how I could relate it a little bit more in a better way. So the next slide, please. It has unlimited potential, as I explained to you, and there are foldable phones available and being experimented in China as of now. And let's see what else can be there in the space shuttle later on. The next one, please. The last one, which I feel, next one, I've already explained this one. It's a very easy thing with also 5G. It makes the internet more faster with the foldable phone and graphene together. So the next slide, please. This is a project by Google. It's called the Project Starline. And in today's time, this has become quite interesting and important, where you are not able to physically meet a lot of people because traveling is a constraint. So this is a, merging of your 3D format, where you actually can see somebody and actually talk to them in a room where they actually appear as if they are physically sitting in front of you. So this is called Project Starline, and this is also very interesting to read about inside Google pages, which is basically the blog of Google. There are a lot of other studies which are there on Google, where you can actually find a lot of interesting things. So this is something which I feel, and the last one, which I feel is very interesting and going to shape the future for tomorrow. Can we go to the next slide, please? So it's a technology project, which is also a software and a hardware together. So you can imagine a kind of a magic window in which you can actually see the person in life size. And there is another slide where I have actually tried and explained that you're actually feeling that they are there. And probably like with the computer vision and the Google lenses, which is going to be introduced, I think this is something which can be really interesting for today's times. So that's about it. The 5 technologies which I felt was very interesting for everybody to know. I'm sure a lot of you already know about them, but then I thought that these are my favorite ones. For the second part, which Sir has asked me about, what are we actually going to do on the digital talent, which we are actually looking for, is basically there are a lot of technologies, there is a lot of changes which has happened, but then we have arrived at a stage or media, digital media, where a lot of things are automated. So for the students, I would suggest specialization and understanding a niche for themselves and having an in-depth knowledge. For example, if they pick up an industry, the industry and the technology is something which they need to know everything about, and specialize, because the world is going to have specialists and more freelancers in the future. So for example, if you know video editing, then know all the formats, for example, 3D, to how do you create short videos, to long formats, to every other stuff, okay? For example, you want to carve out a career in social media today, then you must know, how can you, create content, and probably do a certification course from HubSpot, which is globally recognized. The courses are pretty easy for you to actually, go through and do your certification. It's a worldwide recognized. Similarly, Google has now introduced their own courses. So if you're doing, say, an SEO course, or if you're doing a certification which is to do a certain amount of part, say a blueprint from Facebook. So just specialize in something which you feel is interesting for you, and this is the way to grow in a certain, because industry is all over the place. You need not know everything, but specialize in something which is interesting for you, and know that properly, because the people who know a certain depth of a certain thing, for example, if you know advertising, you know the integrated stuff and the digital, but if you know a certain industry, you are the specialist, and you would always be earning and doing your stuff much better than anybody else. So that's about it, and thank you. And I think I've taken 10 minutes only. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, madam. We talk about fancy words like futuristic and future ready in our academic curriculums all the time, but we don't really understand what those terms mean. While I was listening to your talk, I understood exactly what those terms mean, and this is how the academic syllabus, the curriculum, needs to be made. The future curriculum needs to take industry into consideration and rephrase itself. Unfortunately, in our country, particularly in media, our syllabi documents, our syllabus, our curriculum is not up to the standards. I'm sorry to say that. I have to say that. Thank you so much, madam. It was really enlightening to know all these new trends from you, and I'm sure students who are attending this event will be immensely benefited by your talk. So moving ahead, conference can, so when we talk about conferences, we talk about value creation, we talk about knowledge creation. So, and this pandemic has taught us a number of lessons. Indeed so. It also exposed the gaping holes in the system. It again proved how helpless we are to nature. However, there were human errors in dealing with the pandemic. On hindsight, it is important that we look at those errors and make a conscious attempt at correcting those as individuals, as a society, and as a country. In an effort to do exactly that, the book, Gasping for Breath, A Man-Made Tragedy, was conceptualized by the Progressive Research Foundation. I'll invite Professor Ujjwal K. Chaudhary to talk a bit about the book and launch it online today.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sunan. Today has been a fabulous session. I mean, it's mind-blowing, the content-wise, the depth-wise, the analysis-wise, and now with Jaya, the technology-wise. It has gone beyond our expectations, indeed. And Sunan, in this online self-on-air, as it is on air, let me congratulate you for a fabulous moderation as well. Amazing moderation, the research, the way you are throwing. Thank you very much. This is what the standard should be for all the 75 sessions. We are trying as best as we can in every other session as well. So coming to the topic today, Sunan has asked me to show this book. First, let me show the book. I don't know if you can see. Yes. Gasping for Breath, question mark, a man-made tragedy, question mark. Let me cancel my what do you call, no, I cannot do that perhaps. A virtual background may not show you the entire cover. I don't know.
You just don't have to move a little bit.
Yeah.
Stop moving. Just show it on the camera and be just a bit still so you can actually show.
I'm trying that. I'm trying that. And show the book cover. Host, can you show the book cover? The host has an image of it. I request the host to show the book cover. Yes. So the book cover is this, Gasping for Breath, A Man-Made Tragedy, question mark. This is very important. Question mark. We are not passing a judgment, we are raising questions. And as has been said earlier by Dr. Roy, raising question is the right thing in a democracy. Even if we sometimes differ in our answers, but still questions keep us alive. Questions show that there are multiple truths. So the book has been edited by Dr. Sunayan largely, let me say that. My role was to get together the whole team, the resources, the concept, and initiate the process. But as far as the editing, hardcore editing work is concerned, it is largely the work of Dr. Sunayan Bhattacharjee. And the book has write-ups. Now we will share the details more later individually and in groups. Some details have been shared already. The write-ups cover different segments: life during lockdown, one; impact on economy, another; the devastating second wave, we all know about it; third, impact on migrant laborers, women and children; next, COVID-19 and civil liberties, very, very good section on that. What were the laws passed, what human rights challenges were there; then digital divide and education during COVID-19 times. This is now the major area. We know 52% of Indian children in schools and colleges and universities did not have 1 ounce of education during this period because of the digital divide. The remaining 48% had different levels of digital education. And this is not me speaking, this is UNESCO's data of December 2020. It talks about the status from April to December 2020. However, 21 might have been a little better. The vaccine march, that's the next segment, universal vaccination, that role. The role of media and communication, very good write-ups on infodemic along with pandemic and the use of social media, good and bad, both purposes. And postscript focuses on 1 billion COVID vaccines. Could we have done better within this period of time? This is the overall, the book. Once again, we can come back to the video. This is the cover of the book, as we can see. And this cover of the book also, it has also been shown in the screen earlier. The book is already selling and being accepted reasonably well. It's only the first beginning. And this book does not only find fault with one authority or the other. Yes, naturally, governments will have a major role, and National Disaster Management Act calls the central government more responsible for managing any disasters. But there are failures at the state and the local level also. But the book also talks about the failure of the middle class, how they have treated the people at the grassroots. Book also talks about saluting the corona warriors, particularly the sanitation workers and people at the grassroots who have actually kept the society alive when everyone was inside their homes. And many more aspects. I would not get into that. It's already late today. And I would only request that please have a genuine interest in having a look at the book. 16 writers, they are academicians, they are editors, they are researchers, they are social workers, together have come out with 20 chapters focusing on 20 areas of the impact of COVID on Indian economy and society. And this is something that we would like to give for the future of this nation, for the future generations, bringing together, because people will forget later what the nightmare that we have been going through. Hope 2022 is far better. Back to you, Dr. Sunayan.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the book launch. I hope that it does well eventually. That's exactly what we have hoped for. Now we come to another very important part of the session. This is where we talked about value creation. Now we talk about knowledge creation. Now we talk about contribution to fundamental areas of a particular discipline. This is the paper presentation segment of our session today. And we have two very able presenters. And I'm sure they're already there. The first, I would like to invite Saima Parvez. She's a research scholar with MIT University, Noida. Saima is also a teaching assistant to the Indian Institute of Mass Communication in Delhi. And the title of her paper is very relevant. It says, Impact of Digital Divide on the Other Sex Post-COVID Scenario. The title in itself talks about how important the research paper is. I invite Saima to present her paper.
Thank you so much, sir. I feel very humbled to be a part of such eminent people. I just feel too humbled and too small to actually speak in front of them. They have given so much knowledge to all of us. And
Saima, kindly come on video. And if
sir, if I come on video, then my audio will go. So there is some problem there. I'm sharing my screen, sir.
Please do.
Yeah. So my screen is visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah. I'll make it full screen. Yeah. So I'm beginning my presentation, sir. So the title of my presentation is Impact of Digital Divide on the Other Sex Post-COVID Scenario. A brief glimpse of my paper before I start. So the substance of a nation on micro level and the worth of a civilization on macro level can be judged by the position specified for women in the individual society. As Simone de Beauvoir sketched for existentialist, one is not actually born in a particular way. Rather, she becomes one based on their choices and the resources provided by the society. From time immemorial, women are deprived of their rights of equality with men. The fight for equality can be traced back to the movement started by Raja Ram Mohan Roy against oppression and subjugation of this weaker sex. The pre-existing gendered structural inequalities are now magnified because of COVID-19 pandemic. This paper is a secondary review paper analyzing the impact of COVID on women in different sectors, how women were deprived of digitalization and its benefits while struggling to survive the aftermath of this precarious catastrophe. Paper elucidates on the existing social, economic, and gender inequality, which existed while other forms of disparities surfaced after the onset of coronavirus in India. The paper sheds light on the strategies which can be adopted for a more gendered equal future of our country. So the COVID-19 pandemic, as discussed, and I'm looking forward to read the book which Sir has just launched. So the COVID-19 pandemic has forced the world to incorporate a new normal, a normal which embedded the concepts of self-isolation, physical distancing in the minds of individuals. While the world witnessed a war-like situation with this treacherous crisis, the already existing further tribulations in the society further deepened. One of the major crises witnessed by the world was the flaw in addressing the gendered outbreak of this pandemic. Regretfully, the COVID-19 pandemic has in many ways exacerbated the institutionalized gender discrimination, which had been existing at a systematic level. COVID outlined the importance of communication, particularly the swelling growth of digital communication becoming the need of the hour in the lives of individuals. So digital communication became need of the hour and gained traction due to the limitations that came along with this calamity. New media is the new face of communication. The two most common characteristics of new media are of customized way and tenure of unequal control over information, as quoted by Brasilia. So it can be said that new media encompasses the new channels and mediums of dissemination, large amount of information to a large number of people at the same time. Now, time and location are no longer an hindrance for sharing thoughts, information, or experience. The COVID-19 pandemic has adversely affected women by exposing them to higher health risk, higher risk of becoming unemployed, in addition to the burden of household and caregiving responsibilities during the lockdown. Moving forward, the COVID-19 crisis has accelerated digitalization, but has had adverse impact on women. The COVID-19 crisis has accelerated the digital transformation trends around the globe, as evidenced in the development and expansion of digital infrastructure, the shift to digital delivery of services by firms and within organizations. For instance, in education, healthcare, retail, and increased implementation of digital technologies. Although the pandemic has affected women around the world differently, it has exposed previously overlooked gender biases, such as gender racial gap, looking at health risk. For instance, we find this I'm giving a global overview. For instance, we find that Black women in the United States were more vulnerable and at higher risk of dying from COVID-19 than Black men or white women. This is quoted by D'Amico in 2021. What is of particular concern is that gendered attitudes seem to have changed during the pandemic, certainly not in favor of women. For instance, West German fathers' egalitarian attitudes towards maternal employment had been steadily increasing in the pre-pandemic period, but dropped considerably during the pandemic. The development is troubling, as it suggests that COVID-19 crisis has not only influenced the short-term allocation of household chores, it has also reversed positive trend towards more egalitarian gender roles. The reversal of this trend could leave women with less time to engage in productive, remunerated work and inhibit female empowerment in the post-pandemic period. Denzer et. 2021. Moving forward, status in India. This is according to a research. Although India has 220 million smartphone users and is the second largest smartphone market in the world, the overall penetration is still just about 30% of the population. There is a huge urban-rural digital divide. According to statistics, more than 75% of broadband connections in the country are in top 30 cities. Similarly, many states like northeastern states, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Jharkhand, etc., lag behind other states in the use and development of ICTs. Globally, 12% more men used internet than women in 2017, while in India, only 29% of the total internet users are females. Another important reason of digital divide in India is knowledge divide. Knowledge divide is directly related with digital divide. So now moving on to gendered digital divide. When one has a microscopic view on the dismal effects of pandemic, especially on the other sex, then one can see a significant decline in various facets of women's life in relation to their health, finance, social standing, or domestic situation. Evidence from past epidemics, including Ebola in 2014 to 16, Zika 2016, suggest that marginalized sections like women and children are at greater risk of exploitation and sexual violence, according to UN Report 2020. Poor health conditions of women were the direct outcomes of increased stress, disruption of social and protective networks, and decreased access to services. The UN report also accentuated in its recommendation the importance of focusing on the gender-related dimensions of the ongoing global health crisis. Furthermore, it stressed upon the urgent need to integrate gender neutrality in health responses and the importance of keeping in mind gender equality by policymakers and crisis responders in providing support. Gender bias plays a considerably negative role in the past health emergencies, and its effect can be felt even today. So over here, this is a report of 2021. We can easily see the gap of the penetration of mobile owners in South Asia, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan. This is just a comparative study and a comparative analysis, which gives us a brief overview of the digital divide. So moving on to the impact of digital divide, the impact is low female representation, denial to information knowledge, non-delivery of welfare schemes. So hand hygiene, sanitation is a critical element in preventing the spread of COVID-19. We all know that. Yet 3 billion people, or 40% of world's population, do not have a hand washing facility. The world's extreme poor, 689.4 million, over half of whom are women and girls, living on less than USD 1.90 a day. Displaced people and refugees are at immediate high risk.
Saima, if you can wrap up, that will be great.
I'll just wrap up. Women and girls who already faced health and safety implications in managing their sexual and reproductive health, further, the crisis deepened further. Moving on to pandemic magnifying existing inequalities. So the virus, as noted by Nobel Prize laureate Olga, the virus will alert us about another truth, which is how very much we aren't equal. She writes that before our eyes, the smoke is dispersing from the civilizational paradigm and has shaped us over the past 200 years. I'm just rushing through. Women are at a considerable disadvantage again in a man's world, quoted by D. Beaver, with limited opportunities available outside the household. They are expected to become caregivers, virtuous daughter-in-laws, beneficial working partners, fruitful childbearers, and impeccable housemakers. All these roles they play come automatically attached with this gender. So although the COVID-19 pandemic affects everyone globally, it is certainly not the case. We are all in this together. This is certainly not the case, as Antonio Guterres, 2020 Secretary General of the UN nation states. So this is the impact of COVID-19 on women in India. These are just figures which are there, how the places that we have fallen and the gender gap that has deepened, the global impact which I just shared. I will just come down. So these are some figures which show that how, because of restriction and because of the fall of digital divide, or because of the less penetration of internet, and internet became the only source of communication. And when that did not existed, then what are the problems that women faced? Increased sexual violence, increased domestic violence, decreased economic value, etc. So I would just end, and when I talk about a global or a digital economic ecosystem spurring out of COVID-19, so this is an example of this. There are social media toolkits which are available now, and UN is making these toolkits which are helping women talking about domestic violence, how they are circulating their helpline numbers, etc. And they're addressing all these issues which came up, and they realize that, okay, COVID-19 is deepening this crisis. So I would conclude in the end by saying that this paper elucidates that in the post-COVID-19 era, authorities must design programs without any gender bias. The authorities must be well equipped with adequate knowledge, gender disaggregated data for addressing the socio-economic impact of COVID. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Saima. That was a very relevant paper, and in the current context, it holds much more importance. Anyway, because we are already late, so I'll move on to the next presenter. I would now invite Ashwath Narayan SL to present his research paper entitled Role of Indian Print Media in Attaining Independence, a study of Dravidian vernacular press during freedom struggle, which takes into account one part of the country for that matter. It's a very interesting paper, which he has written along with his co-author and research supervisor, Dr. Rajeshwari R. While Ashwatha is presently pursuing his PhD from the Department of Electronic Media under Bangalore University in Bangalore, Dr. Rajeshwari is currently working as an assistant professor in the same department. Over to you, Ashwath.
Good evening, sir, everybody. Just a minute, sir, I will share my PPT. Sir, is it visible, sir?
Yeah, visible. Speak, it is visible. You can make it full screen.
Yeah. Again, I'm wishing good evening, everybody. It's very really, it's very privilege and honor for me to present my paper with the presence of such a great and eminent personalities. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for GCC for giving me this opportunity. Title of my research paper is Role of Indian Print Media in Attaining Independence, a study of Dravidian vernacular press during freedom struggle.
Ashwath, if you can just press F5, it will come full screen.
Yes, sir. I have pressed it.
Sir?
Yeah.
Oh,
Cool.
okay. Is it in my full screen, right, sir? Okay.
Thank you very much. I am Ashwath Narayan from Department of Electronic Media. And my research supervisor is Dr.
Ashwath, you are in two devices. Go out of one device. You are in two devices. There is echo of the voice. Yeah.
Sir, actually, I am just using my headphones, sir.
Then you please take the headphone out. There is some problem of audio. Just make it a simple present. We are already late. Please make it a simple present.
Sorry, yeah. Sorry, sir, for the delay.
That's okay. This is also one of the learnings.
Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, you're audible. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Introduction part of my research paper is the pen is mightier. Yeah. As we know, the pen is mightier than the sword. Okay. This is very famous quote which was given by English author Edward Bulwer Lytton. So this proverb this quote has very much but relevant during the freedom struggle. The evolution of Indian press was fraught with developmental difficulties, illiteracy, colonial constraints, and repression. It has disseminated the ideas of freedom and became prominent tool for freedom struggle. By the time of independence in 1947, the Indian population was around 345 million, as per Srinivasan 2004, his research paper, with the literacy rate averaging around 18%. There were 240 newspapers, including 44 English newspapers, published in India, and there were 6 All India radio stations. And the Indian print media, which has played a significant role in the freedom movement, has since then multiplied to 1 lakh registered newspapers, according to Register of Newspapers for India in 2019. According to National Readership Survey 2019, Indian newspapers and magazines were being read by 91.52 lakh readers at present. In 1818, the first newspaper published in Indian language was Samachar Darpan. It was in Bengali. And then the Bombay Samachar was there. It was the first Gujarati language newspaper, which was launched around 1822. The first Hindi language newspaper, Samachar Sudha Darshan, came into existence around 1854. Like this, many newspapers were, many vernacular press as established, and they were giving very much awareness and consciousness consciousness about nationalism among the masses. And along with English newspapers, there were many vernacular press from many regional languages like Malayalam, Marathi, Kannada, Tamil, Urdu, Telugu, etc. It's believed political leaders, reformers, and underground resistance groups produced numerous newspapers and magazines following the Indian Rebellion of 1857. There were many attempts through colonial laws to curb the press during British rule, like License Registration Act 1867, Vernacular Press Act 1878. This is very much important act, which was also called Gagging Act, which was enacted during the time of Lord Lytton. Indian Press Act 1910 also there, and Indian Press are Emergency Powers Act 1931. So on. There are many this kind of acts were brought by Britishers to curb the Indian press. Still, the press was able to survive, and the vernacular press was continued by passionate leaders. The Dravidian and South Indian language newspapers were also crucial in raising consciousness about Indian nationalism. Scope of the study, these are all my part of the research paper. Many Indians were started newspapers in different vernacular languages along with English, as I already told. This information is all included, what I told. The importance of my research paper. So we can move further, I hope. And then statement of my research problem is how Dravidian vernacular press has played a key role in attaining Indian independence from 1857. Why I had chosen 1857 means after 1857 the surge of vernacular press has multiplied. That's why. And then objectives of my research paper were examine the role of print media in raising consciousness of nationalism during freedom struggle. And the second objective to find out different South Indian newspapers during British rule. And the last objective was to analyze the role of Dravidian vernacular press in attaining freedom. The methodology part, if I take, I had followed observation, content analysis, both methods used in this research paper, and I had taken only, I already, as per the title, I had taken only Dravidian vernacular press. That is only from Kannada, Telugu, Tamil, Malayalam for considered for the research purpose. Yes, there are other newspapers also there during freedom struggle. And then the findings of my research paper were I had divided those findings in the order of as per objective. The first objective was role of print media in raising consciousness of nationalism during freedom struggle. For that objectives, I had according to my observation and content analysis of some books and research articles. The national movements emerged after 1857 mainly focused more on political propaganda and education formation and propagation of nationalist ideology, and arousing trial, mobilization and consolidation of public opinion. For this purpose, the press moved a crucial tool in the hands of.
Ashwath, you are not audible. Your voice is breaking.
Oh, okay, sir. Okay. Is it the same issue with others also, sir?
Now it's fine. Now I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Yeah. Where I was, yeah. For this purpose, the press proved a crucial tool in the hands of nationalists. The distinguished and fearless journalists of time brought many newspapers. These included Samwad Komedi and Mirat ul Akbar under Rajaram Mohan Rai. As you know, he is also called father of Indian journalism, and he was well-known journalist at that time, and he was well-known social reformer also. And the Hindu and Swadeshi Mitran under G. Subramania Iyer, the Bengali under Surendranath Banerjee sir, Voice of India under Rashtragoptar under Dadabhai Nauroji, Amrit Bazar Patrika under Sishish Kumar Ghosh and Motilal Ghosh, Indian Mirror newspaper under N.N. Sen, and these are all two newspapers very much famous. That is from Balaganganath Tilak. That those are Kesari and Maratha, and then Sudara Khan.
You need to wrap up now. You need to wrap up now. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah, these are all the newspapers was there from the Indian perspective, sir. Yeah, when you move to this Dravidian vernacular press, sir. I mean, sir, I can't move to the next slide, sir. Hello.
Just speak. Just speak. It's okay. Just speak. You don't have to move to this slide. Just speak. It's okay.
Sir, just give me just 5 minutes, sir. I'll wrap it up, sir. Hello, please, sir. See, my purpose was to what to give information about the Dravidian vernacular press. I'll speak, sir. Yeah, see, these are all the as I already told, Britishers were brought many acts to curb the Indian press, but at that time, but still, the passionate and very fearless journalists were very much enthusiastic to give much information and to give consciousness among the masses. When it comes to the different South Indian newspapers and the analysis of Dravidian press role in attaining freedom is from the Kannada, especially Kannada language, we have controlled by we have first newspaper is Mangalore Samachar by Armand Mogli in 1843, aimed at propagating Christianity. Then onwards, many newspapers were which were intended to raise the nationalism feelings among the masses. And then we have many newspapers from the vernacular press like Mysore Utkranta Bodhini, Bhasham Tirumalacharya, Mysore Gazette. These are all like many newspapers were brought. The father of Kannada journalism, we called M. Venkatalaya, brought out his weekly Utkranta Chintamani also. Then we come to between 1880 to 1908, many number of Kannada newspapers appeared like Kannada Kesari, Patrika, Artha Sadhaka Patrika. Like that, we have many newspapers. And in that time, we have entry of women journalists into freedom movement also. And the British government enacted as per British government's rules. The Mysore government enacted the Mysore newspaper regulation act 1808 as per the British rules. That 1908 they have that some regulation act for freedom of press, under which permission of the government had to obtain before publishing a newspaper like that. And during the regime of Diwan of Sir M. Vishwesharaya, the press acts were modified. Then
Ashwath, can you just sum it up without reading out the entire slides? That will be great because we really are short of time now.
Yeah, sir.
You can just sum up your findings rather than reading out the entire thing. That will be great.
Yeah, okay, sir. Okay. Yeah, we have from Telugu. From Telugu also we have some important newspapers, and they were also very much important in during freedom struggle and in attaining the independence. So we have, especially from Tamil, we have Swadesh Mitran. It was very much popular at that time, and for that, the largest advertisers in England and America also preferred the Swadesh Mitran as a medium for advertisements. Okay, and then we have from Malayalam. Malayalam was also at that time. Even Gandhi also went to attend that Vaikom Satyagraha and other freedom movements also. So from that part also, from that area also, we have many freedom fighters and journalists who have played key role in nationalism movements. Okay, this conclusion part of my research paper is nationalism unites the people with oneness feeling without geographical boundaries, which has grown at the time of freedom struggle. Journalists, reformers, and freedom fighters recognized the strength of written word and used different media to raise the essence of nationalism. The results of the study show that vernacular newspapers, along with English, had intent to arouse political consciousness to inculcate nationalism. As Roper Lethbridge opined that the impact of vernacular press, that is, if a single copy reaches a village, its content soon becomes known to nearly every man residing in the neighborhood. In this way, the vernacular press was very much popular at that time. These are all bibliographic part of my research paper. And yeah, before concluding my research paper, I just want to remember the farmers. Today we have National Farmers Day. I just want to remember their sacrifice, their efforts, hard works to our country. Especially we have as a developing economy. They are very much, they're like backbone of our Indian economy. So thank you, sir. Thank you for this opportunity. So hereby I am concluding, sir.
Thank you, Ashwath, for a very detailed presentation, and a neglected presentation for that matter, a neglected topic for that matter. Now, I would request, without any further ado, I would request Professor Malik to deliver the closing address.
Thank you, Sunen. We have been reminded time and again, we have reminded ourselves that we are running short of time. But what an eclectic, what a fantastic session. Fantastic indeed. You know, I was reading the chat box also. Everybody was mesmerized by the very opening remark by Mr. Sanjay Roy. What a session, you know, so free flowing, so impromptu, so passionate insight into the media and what has to be done, what needs to be done. How, you know, giving the example of Varanasi, he talked about how, you know, convenient facts are pushed or peddled at the cost of, they're also facts only, but they are not facts which are in alignment or aligned to your ideas, you know, or your narrative. Wonderful presentation, and followed by a very meticulous study by Dr. Indranil Chakravarti, you know, socio-economic background of the workers in IT industry and the kind of inhuman conditions that they work. And we consider IT industry or IT sector to be one of the growth engines of the country. Now, if IT industry is one of the growth engines of the country, which is the truth, then the fact it also emerges from this research that they are also the fountainhead of violations of human rights and, you know, sector of oppression. I am just saying by extension, you know, so what has to be done, we need to discuss, we need to ponder over. And then, of course, Rudra, Anurag Rudra, a bureaucrat who spoke more like a common citizen, a commoner, with so much of passion, discussing the nationalism, sub-nationalism, and paranationalism. What a bridge he built between nationalism to, you know, paranationalism and sub-nationalism. Wonderful to hear to him. And as Sunen, he had expressed that he'll represent Northeast. He truly told us about Northeast. The pain of, you know, the joy of having multiple identity, and at the same time, the problem of having multiple identities. All of us have been facing, all of us. I'm one of them, you know, like many people. I'm also a migrant within India, you know, if you know. And then we had what is coming up. Jaya Prasad, she took us to the future. Well, the future is already here. In fact, you know, most of the things that she was talking about is, you know, either happening or, you know, almost happening. So we are very eagerly waiting for some of the things like, you know, the smart tattoos, wearable watches, you know, phones, wearable phones have come now. We are waiting for wearable tattoos, graphene that she was talking about. All these things are going to make lots of changes to our life. And then two young researchers presenting their paper. I think the scholars, they get lots of platforms, they get invited to speak at many places, they get opportunity to share their knowledge and wisdom and their expertise. But giving platform to two young people was a good thing, very good, well thought out thing. And I really compliment Dr. Bhattacharya and the entire GMEC team and the force behind it, Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary, for, you know, thinking of young researchers. That's it. I think we had a wonderful session. Everybody enjoyed, though, I mean, it's pretty late in the night and I can see the level of participation or the number of participants are falling. But I think those who left out, Those who have stayed, they have gained a lot. Those who have left out, they have lost something. Thank you very much for asking me to be part of this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for ending the session on a very high note, in fact. So, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Professor Dr. Pradeep Malik for chairing today's session. It was indeed a pleasure to host Sanjay Roy, one of the biggest names in the field of media arts and learning. We thank him from the core of our heart. Dr. Indranil enriched the discussion with his extremely erudite talk on media and labor. Thank you, sir, for gracing today's occasion. Anurag Rudra imparted a northeastern dash to the entire program and provided a different perspective altogether. We take this opportunity to thank you. Jaya Prasad was brilliant in bringing a corporate standpoint to the discussion and talking about what is futuristic and what is future ready. We are indeed thankful to you, Jaya. We also thank Saima Parvej and Ashwath Narayan SL for presenting their papers. I also take this opportunity to thank the man behind the show, Professor K.G. Suresh, Professor Ujjwal K. Chaudhary, and Dr. Umashankar Pandey. They have to be complimented for running the show so efficiently. I also thank, and last but not the least, I also thank all those who worked tirelessly to make the show a design technology, which is very important, and content success. Last, let me thank all those who spared time to attend today's webinar. Wisdom and information, as they say, never goes waste. I'm sure it was a fruitful experience for them. We shall again congregate for the 31st day of GCSE 2021-22 on January 4th, 2022. Thank you all and have a great weekend. A little early weekend, but weekend nonetheless. Thank you.